Since the dawn of human civilization, when people still had little understanding of the world around them, they have looked up at the star-filled night sky and begun to ask profound questions. Astronomy, both in the literal and symbolic sense, is one of the oldest fields our ancestors ever developed. You can clearly see traces of this in ancient observatories thousands of years old, from the stone monuments of England to the pyramids of Egypt, all still standing tall, like eternal sentinels guarding the mysteries above. Our ancestors didn't just observe the stars. They saw sacred signs, powerful gods, and even the fate of humankind written in light. To them, the sky wasn't just a static dome. It was a gateway, a divine connection to gods and beings beyond comprehension. They revered celestial phenomena as omens and viewed the motion of the cosmos as the heartbeat of destiny. As time passed, modern science allowed us to see farther, clearer, and understand more than our ancestors ever dreamed of. Yet with that progress came another kind of discovery, something not of this world. Beyond familiar celestial bodies like the moon, the sun, or the planets, humans began detecting unidentified objects, things moving in strange patterns, sometimes defying the very laws of physics. And thus the concept of the UFO was born. UFO, short for Unidentified Flying Object, has grown beyond being a topic of scientific study. It has become a cultural symbol, inspiring countless films, theories, and conspiracies. Each time it's mentioned, the term opens up new perspectives, bold speculations, and unanswered questions. In the next 30 minutes, we invite you to dive deeper into the mystery, the hidden secrets of UFOs and extraterrestrial beings, entities that may have visited Earth long before the rise of our civilization. In 1947, the beginning of the modern UFO era. Although ancient civilizations carved images of strange beings we might now call aliens, most scientists agree that the modern era of UFOs began in 1947. When you hear the year 1947, your mind likely jumps straight to the famous Roswell incident, an immortal symbol in UFO history. However, there was another event that same year, less frequently mentioned, but no less influential. The Kenneth Arnold sighting, the first time the term flying saucer was ever used to describe an unidentified object. It was Arnold himself who coined the phrase, giving birth to a concept that would soon become a global phenomenon. On June 24, 1947, Kenneth Arnold, a seasoned pilot, was flying his personal Call Air A-2 aircraft from Chehalis to Yakima, Washington. During the flight, he decided to take a detour over the Mount Rainier area to look for the wreckage of a missing military aircraft, a C-46, with the hope of earning a $5,000 reward. The sky was clear visibility, ideal, a perfect day for exploration or to witness something that defied all logic. At around 3:00 p.m., while flying at an altitude of over 9,000 feet, about 2,800 meters, Arnold suddenly saw a brilliant flash of light ahead of him, like sunlight reflecting off a massive mirror. He immediately checked his radar, but aside from a Douglas DC-4 more than 20 kilometers away, there was nothing on the screen. At that moment, Arnold began to question his own eyesight, but just seconds later, more flashes appeared, this time from his left. Arnold clearly saw several strange objects darting across the sky at incredible speeds, skipping along like silver discs, gliding just above the water. They weren't flying in any conventional way. They wobbled, dipped, and reflected sunlight like a string of silver mirrors rushing through the sky. Upon landing in Yakima, Arnold immediately shared his story with fellow pilots. Some suggested he might have seen test missiles or secret military aircraft, but Arnold wasn't convinced. How could the military test missiles without closing the airspace? And if these were advanced aircraft, why did they fly in such strange formations? With such bizarre, erratic motion? Kenneth Arnold's story spread rapidly. At the time, journalists had no standard term for these mysterious objects, so they used Arnold's own words, flying saucers. A simple phrase, but one that carried a haunting power. It marked the beginning of a new chapter in history. A chapter filled with the unknown, with mysterious encounters, and a worldwide obsession with the possibility of life beyond Earth. The story of a pilot accidentally witnessing strange objects in American airspace quickly captured the public imagination. Arnold's eyewitness account was first published in afternoon newspapers the very next day. Some international outlets even ran the story on their front pages by June 26, 1947, drawing significant attention from readers around the world. Since then, Arnold's experience has inspired numerous documentaries and academic studies, often revisiting the incident as a key turning point in the history of unexplained aerial phenomena. And surely you'd agree the Kenneth Arnold UFO sighting laid a solid foundation for the field of unidentified flying object research that followed. The publication of Arnold's report in the mainstream media opened an unprecedented door. A flood of similar reports began pouring in from across the United States. The U.S. Air Force at the time was nearly overwhelmed by the sheer volume of information from civilians claiming to have witnessed flying saucers, a newly coined phrase that was as haunting as it was mysterious. Many firmly believed these objects were not man-made, but rather the creations of intelligent beings from distant stars who had unexpectedly visited Earth. This strange phenomenon wasn't limited to American borders. In fact, from May to September 1947, in the city of Tashkent, Uzbekistan, a place seemingly unrelated to the story people reported, strange clusters of light appearing regularly between 9 and 10 p.m. each night. At their brightest, these lights were described as being about 20% the size of the full moon in apparent diameter. A local newspaper even reported that in mid-August 1952, two mysterious flying saucers appeared, prompting a military response. But after 15 minutes of pursuit, the objects vanished beyond the horizon as if they had never existed. In Germany, a man recounted an incredible story. While riding a bicycle with his daughter, he encountered a cone-shaped flying saucer with two strange beings sitting silently on board, dressed in gleaming silver suits, unmoving like alien statues. Gradually, UFO sightings were no longer isolated incidents. Larger-scale events began to emerge. One of the most notable took place in Westall, Australia. At around 11 a.m. on Wednesday, April 6, 1966, students and teachers at Westall High School were preparing for lunch after a physical education class when an unidentified object suddenly appeared in the sky. It was oval-shaped gray and twice the size of a family car. The object hovered in midair, slowly descended, then disappeared to the southwest beyond the hills. Andrew Greenwood, the school's science teacher, told the Dandenong Journal that he had seen a silver-blue disc-like object. The event was witnessed by over 200 people, and it didn't end there. The strange object reappeared, this time being pursued by 5 aircraft as if it were trying to escape. To this day, Westall remains one of the most well-documented UFO encounters in Australian history. In reality, a few unusual phenomena had been reported even before 1947, but due to the limited number of cases and lack of official investigation, these incidents faded into obscurity. Even when reports came from military personnel, they were often dismissed or ignored. Some attributed them to natural phenomena. Others believed they were hallucinations or the result of mass panic. Authorities from intelligence agencies to air defense units each handled a portion of the reports, leading to a lack of coordination and consistency in dealing with the information. At the time, UFOs had no official standing in scientific or military research. To address this situation, on December 30th, 1947, the chairman of the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff approved the creation of a special project to collect, cross-reference, evaluate, and respond to all information related to unidentified flying objects that could potentially impact national security. The project was given the codename SIGN, as in tracing a signal, and was placed under the direct supervision of the U.S. Air Force Command. The project immediately proved its importance. The U.S. Air Force realized that to make sense of the strange phenomena in the skies, they needed the help of astronomers. A lack of astronomical knowledge could easily lead people to mistake ordinary events, such as comets, meteors, or stars shifting position, for UFOs. The person appointed as the project's chief advisor was Dr. J. Allen Hynek, director of the Macmillan Observatory at Ohio State University. After a year of investigation, Dr. Hynek's team reviewed 237 cases where individuals claimed to have seen UFOs with their own eyes. In the final report, he concluded 32% of the incidents could be explained by astronomical phenomena. 35% were attributed to objects such as balloons, flares, rockets, or birds. Of the remaining 33%, 13% lacked sufficient evidence, while 20% were supported by credible observations, yet could not be explained by any known scientific phenomena. Despite these figures, the majority of the scientific community remained skeptical. Many researchers insisted that the entire UFO phenomenon was simply the result of mass hysteria, misinterpretation, deliberate hoaxes, or mentally unstable individuals. The official conclusion was that UFOs posed no threat to national security and were not significant enough to warrant further in-depth study. But one question lingered unanswered. If UFOs aren't worth our attention, then why, after so many decades, can we still not escape those mysterious lights in the sky? By February 1949, the military's first UFO investigation project was officially suspended and replaced with another research program. It seemed as though the story of unidentified flying objects might end there. But the reality was quite the opposite. Even after the project was shut down, a series of strange UFO-related incidents continued to occur, often becoming more complex and harder to explain. What was especially notable this time was that the reports were no longer just from civilians, but from military radar operators themselves, highly trained experts with deep technical knowledge. The media, which had once treated UFOs as a passing curiosity, now began to see them as a ratings magnet worthy of more serious attention. In 1952, Dr. J. Allen Hynek, who had worked on the previous UFO research project, was invited back this time in a completely new role. Not only did he review the previous reports, but he also personally interviewed individuals who claimed to have seen UFOs. In particular, he focused on those who claimed to have been abducted by extraterrestrials. Through 18 cases of alleged direct contact, Hynek uncovered something noteworthy: most of these people were lying. Many were exposed after just a few technical questions. Others failed polygraph tests. This wasn't surprising. By that time, the topic of UFOs had become a media goldmine. Some media outlets were reportedly offering up to $500 just to interview someone who claimed to have encountered aliens. However, this did not mean that all the stories were fabricated. There were still a few deeply mysterious cases impossible to explain that challenged everything people thought was irrational. And one of the most famous of these was the experience of Betty and Barney Hill, an incident that shook the American public and became one of the first alien abduction cases ever taken seriously in recorded history. On the morning of September 19, 1961, after visiting Niagara Falls, the Hills were driving their old Chevrolet back to Portsmouth, New Hampshire. The road was empty, the night quiet, everything seemed peaceful, until a sudden sense of unease swept over them. They looked up at the sky and were stunned. There, just a few meters above their car, hovered a giant oval-shaped object, utterly silent. According to Betty's estimate, the craft was about 200 meters long and yet emitted no sound at all, even as it flew incredibly close to the ground. Suddenly, the object descended, blocking the road and forcing Barney to brake abruptly. From inside the craft, strange beings emerged. They were tall, with large heads, no hair, deep-set temples, and pale skin, a sight straight out of a science fiction movie, except this time it was real. The beings signaled for the Hills to follow them, and then their memory completely vanished. The couple regained consciousness, unsure of how much time had passed. Strangely, both of their watches had stopped. They found themselves inside a room made of shiny metallic material, reflective like a mirror. One of the beings, whom they referred to as an alien, gestured for Barney to follow. Betty was held back. According to Betty, the two remaining beings began examining her body. They closely observed her eyes, nose, and mouth, then laid her down on a table. They attached small black circular devices to her head, yet there were no wires, no screens, no recognizable equipment like those found in hospitals. When they examined her abdomen, one of them inserted a needle-like object into her navel, causing intense pain that made her scream. Seeing this, they immediately stopped. What was especially strange was that, although the beings never opened their mouths, both Betty and Barney could clearly understand what they were trying to say, as if they were communicating through telepathy. When Betty tried to ask where they came from, one of the beings opened her purse, took out her notebook and pen. Then somehow, Betty seemed to fall into a trance. Her hand began to draw a star map, 12 large stars, and 3 smaller ones, all connected by lines, some solid, some dashed. According to the alien, the solid lines represented commonly traveled routes among the stars where their kind lived, while the dashed lines marked less visited locations due to harsh conditions. Betty also said that these beings possessed a civilization hundreds of times more advanced than ours. They didn't need to breathe, yet the room where she was kept had a normal oxygen supply. Whenever Betty felt thirsty, one of them would simply look into her eyes like a hypnotic gaze, and immediately she'd feel as if she had just drunk water. Betty recalled all of this with a chilling level of certainty. And to this day, the Betty and Barney Hill case remains one of the most mysterious and perplexing incidents with no truly convincing explanation. But what about Barney Hill? What exactly happened to him during that bizarre encounter? According to his account, the alien beings seemed particularly interested in the structure of his bones. They carefully measured his height proportions and the dimensions of each part of his body as though conducting a thorough scientific study. Barney remembered assigning a name to one of them, Leader, because he sensed that this being was the one in charge. Leader merely looked at him, but suddenly a voice echoed inside his mind. "Who is the person with you?" Barney didn't speak. He simply thought, "My wife." The voice then continued inside his head. "So your species needs two individuals to create new life." Barney nodded. A sudden thought flashed through his mind. Perhaps these beings were hermaphrodites, capable of reproduction without a mate. Leader seemed to read that thought and responded with a faint smile, a smile that carried an otherworldly understanding far beyond human comprehension. The next morning, the couple was returned to the exact spot from where they had been taken. From that moment on, nothing was ever the same again. The story quickly shook America and spread across the world. Many were skeptical, believing the couple had made it all up for fame. Astronomers at the time pointed out that no known star system matched the map Betty had drawn. Some claimed that Barney's torn clothing was self-inflicted to help fabricate the story. And yet, there were things no one could explain. For nearly 2 weeks after the incident, both Betty and Barney experienced unusually low heart rates and blood pressure, far below normal levels, only for them to suddenly return to normal as if nothing had ever happened. Interestingly, on Betty's pants, investigators discovered a strange layer of pink powder. After thorough analysis, chemists concluded that the substance contained no organic elements whatsoever, and its inorganic composition had never been recorded anywhere on Earth. In 2004, Betty passed away. Barney died 4 years later. Their story seemed destined to fade into obscurity, like hundreds of other bizarre reports that had been dismissed and forgotten. But then in 2015, a shocking discovery reignited the mystery. Astronomer David Scherer announced that he had identified a new star system which he named Zeta Reticuli. And astonishingly, when compared to the star map Betty had drawn under hypnosis decades earlier, it matched perfectly down to the smallest detail. At that point, could anyone still confidently claim that the Hills had made it all up? However, there was still one detail that left many unconvinced: the appearance of the extraterrestrials as described by the Hills. It was strange because their form closely resembled that of humans: a head, 2 arms, 2 legs, and a face with relatively complete features. This stood in stark contrast to the more alien and bizarre depictions commonly portrayed in books and movies at the time. So why would intelligent life from another world look so human? In fact, there's a plausible explanation rooted in evolutionary theory. Of course, this doesn't mean the theory is absolutely correct in every sense, but it serves as a valuable thought framework to help expand our perspective. You must understand this: the human form, with an upright posture, flexible hands, and a large brain, housed in a proportionally big head, is considered an optimal design for an intelligent being. If intelligent life were to evolve elsewhere in the universe, it's quite possible that their bodies would develop along similar evolutionary principles. Therefore, if the beings we call aliens truly exist not as microorganisms or simple plants and animals, but as an advanced civilization, then their humanoid appearance might well be the result of a convergent path of advanced evolution across different worlds. If we consider only the possibility of life, then extraterrestrial life forms could be so diverse that they defy human imagination. However, if we shift the focus to the development of intelligence and civilization, then such life forms must meet certain fundamental criteria. First, an intelligent species must possess a brain large and complex enough to process the enormous amount of information from its surroundings. That brain must do more than remember. It must analyze, calculate, and make decisions, which are the very foundations of any civilization. Second, the body of such a being must have a certain degree of flexibility and coordination, allowing it to adapt and survive in challenging environments. A body that is too rigid, too fragile, or lacks fine motor control would be incapable of developing language, culture, and technology, the essential building blocks of intelligent life. And finally, such a being would need organs capable of manipulation and communication, like hands to use tools, eyes to observe the world, and a communication system such as a mouth or some form of signaling mechanism to convey thoughts. All of these requirements are clearly present in humans. It's no coincidence that humans became the dominant species on Earth. Our biological advantages weren't gifts from the universe. They were the result of hundreds of millions of years of harsh natural selection and evolution. On this planet, the human form has proven itself to be highly effective for the development of intelligence. So the question is, could a similar evolutionary path have occurred on other planets in the universe? The answer might surprise you. In reality, humans aren't the only species with highly adapted evolutionary traits. Many other creatures on Earth have developed features that are remarkably intelligent and well-suited for survival. For instance, aquatic animals like dolphins, whales, and sharks have streamlined bodies that allow them to move swiftly through water. Terrestrial predators like tigers, lions, and leopards possess sharp teeth and claws designed for hunting. And flying species like hawks or sparrows have wings and a lightweight yet durable feather system that enables them to soar through the air. Although these animals evolved from different evolutionary branches, they developed similar traits to adapt to similar environments, a phenomenon known as convergent evolution. Convergent evolution is when unrelated species with no genetic link evolve similar solutions to overcome the same survival challenges due to facing similar environmental pressures. This means that the human form, with its specialized organs for learning, tool-making, and survival, might not be the only form of intelligent life, but it could be one of the most efficient designs that nature has selected. So if there are planets out there with climate pressure, gravity, and environmental conditions similar to Earth, could convergent evolution occur there as well? Could the life forms on those planets evolve into shapes similar to humans? The answer is absolutely possible. The laws of physics are almost uniform throughout the universe, no matter which planet you're on. Matter, energy, gravity, and the way life interacts with its environment all follow unchanging principles. Moreover, astronomers have discovered the existence of numerous planets known as super-Earth planets that are similar in size, mass, temperature, atmosphere, and humidity to our own. This opens up the possibility that if life ever emerged on those planets, it might have evolved over billions of years into a civilization with a form not unlike our own. And if that's true, then the story told by Betty and Barney Hill about humanoid extraterrestrials becomes not so unbelievable after all. In fact, it becomes a plausible hypothesis, one that is understandable when viewed through the lens of evolutionary science and the universal laws of physics. Of course, that doesn't mean we found a definitive answer. Until that day comes, the Hill case remains one of the most credible and mysterious encounters ever reported. It wasn't until 1975 that America would once again be shaken when a young man named Travis Walton claimed to have made direct contact with extraterrestrial beings. On a fateful evening in November 1975, after a long day of hard labor in the Apache Sitgreaves National Forest in Arizona, USA, Travis Walton and 6 co-workers suddenly witnessed a strange phenomenon, a disc-shaped object hovering not far from where they had been cutting trees. The object emitted a deep humming sound and unusual lights, leaving everyone in a state of confusion and fear. While the others panicked and urged him to stay back, Travis, curious and undeterred by danger, approached the strange craft. As he moved into a better viewing position, the disc suddenly darted toward him at incredible speed and emitted a powerful beam of light that struck his body. In an instant, Travis was lifted nearly 20 feet into the air and thrown to the ground unconscious. Terrified and overwhelmed, the group rushed into their truck, fled the scene, and immediately contacted the police. However, their story was met with skepticism from both the public and law enforcement. Many believed the men had fabricated the tale to cover up a murder and hidden Travis's body in the forest. The suspicions only faded when 5 days later, Travis Walton reappeared without a trace of dirt or any serious injuries. What was even more shocking was Travis's account upon his return. He described waking up in a cold, sterile white room, his limbs restrained, lying on a table that resembled an operating table. Around him were three short beings, bald-headed, with abnormally large eyes, observing him intently, as if studying a specimen. After a while, the beings left, then returned wearing strange protective suits, and moved Travis to another room even more bizarre than the first. There, his clothes were removed, and a thin plastic-like sheet was placed over his body. Everything faded into darkness, and when Travis awoke again, he found himself walking down a road leading home. Above him, the UFO silently followed until he neared his house, then it suddenly vanished into the black sky. Travis immediately reported everything to the authorities. During the investigation, he passed all lie detector tests administered by a U.S. UFO research agency. Doctors also used hypnosis therapy to uncover any suppressed memories, and the results astonished many. There was no indication he was lying or hallucinating. Travis's story became one of the most controversial and well-known alien abduction cases in American history. What made it even more mysterious was a phenomenon that occurred 15 years later. In the very forest where the UFO had once appeared, every tree in the area was found to be growing at a rate 85 times faster than normal. No one has been able to explain this anomaly. Was it the lingering effect of extraterrestrial technology interacting with Earth's natural environment? Unlike standard UFO sightings, alleged alien abduction cases are rare and deeply controversial. However, there was another case no less strange or dramatic that took place in 1989, involving an American woman named Linda Cortillum, real name Linda Napolitano. Her encounter is regarded as one of the most compelling yet hotly debated alien contact cases in modern history. According to Linda, around 3 a.m. on November 30th of 1989, while sleeping in her 12th floor Manhattan apartment in New York, she suddenly felt her body being pulled through the window. There was no noise, no broken glass yet. Linda was drawn into a hovering object outside her window, a glowing disc-shaped UFO floating in the night sky. Inside the craft, she saw beings that looked nothing like humans. Large heads, deep black eyes, gray skin, and thin bodies. They brought her into a room resembling an operating theater, conducted physical examinations, and performed bizarre experiments. Linda said she could not recall the full extent of what happened, as if part of her memory had been completely erased. The story seemed unbelievable and easy to dismiss until a year later, when two men named Richard and Dan, both bodyguards working nearby at the time, voluntarily contacted UFO researchers, claiming they had personally witnessed the incident. The details they provided matched Linda's earlier account exactly, despite the fact that they had never met or communicated with her. This case became one of the most prominent records of alleged alien abduction, not only because of the vividness of Linda's testimony, but also due to the uncanny consistency between independent eyewitnesses. Was it merely a coincidence? Or could it truly be evidence of some higher intelligence silently observing humanity? On the night of November 30th, 1989, the exact moment Linda Cortillum claimed to have been abducted, two bodyguards assigned to protect a high-profile individual near the Brooklyn Bridge witnessed a terrifying sight. While sitting in a luxury limousine crossing the famous bridge, they suddenly saw a woman floating in midair, being drawn into a hovering, unidentified flying object above the New York City skyline. The two men immediately gave chase, but in the blink of an eye, the UFO vanished without a trace. At first, this story seemed like a hallucination or a shared illusion. But then another witness came forward, a woman named Janet Kimball, who confirmed she had also seen the entire event unfold. She recounted that she happened to be near the Brooklyn Bridge at the exact time and saw Linda being pulled into the strange craft with her own eyes. After that, more and more witnesses began to emerge, all of them giving remarkably consistent descriptions. To date, at least 23 individuals have publicly come forward, all confirming that they witnessed the alien abduction that occurred in Manhattan in 1989. This extraordinary alignment of testimonies has made the case one of the most controversial and puzzling UFO mysteries of the 20th century. If only one or two people had come forward, doubt would be reasonable. But when 23 people independently describe the same shocking event, it becomes hard to dismiss it as a hoax or mass delusion. Personally, I believe that encounters like these, though still beyond the reach of modern science, are enough to compel us to seriously question the existence of intelligent life beyond Earth. Perhaps it's time for humanity to broaden its awareness to better understand the origins, intentions, and behaviors of those who may be visiting our planet. Because it is precisely that awareness and understanding that could one day allow us to form a connection, or at the very least learn how to protect ourselves if they ever return with motives less peaceful. So are you ready to believe that aliens might truly exist? Do you have questions about the alien encounters recorded throughout history? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. You might just spark a fascinating conversation that takes us deeper into the mysterious world that continues to call out to us. Are we truly alone in this vast universe? For thousands of years, humankind has asked that question about the existence of other beings beyond Earth, of civilizations that may have risen long before our own. Even with the most advanced technology in human history at our fingertips, we still can't say with certainty whether someone else out there is watching us. However, somewhere out there, in the vast expanse of space, another form of life seems to exist, quietly evolving and at times setting foot on our planet. They may possess abilities that modern science cannot yet explain. Strange encounters, mysterious disappearances, and numerous eyewitnesses recounting things beyond imagination. All of it weaves together a dark yet fascinating portrait of an unseen world still waiting to be discovered. One of the most remarkable and still unexplained cases is the story of Betty and Ron. What she later recalled would cause the world to pause and reflect. Does the boundary between reality and the mystical truly exist? What really happened that night? Could there be another layer of reality intertwined with our own? Each mystery revealed, each seemingly minor detail uncovered, opens new doors leading us on a journey of discovery far beyond our current understanding. And perhaps you, the one watching this video right now, will be the person who helps bring humanity one step closer to the truth. So stay with us for the next 30 minutes, because what you're about to see may forever change the way you view the universe. The next story is one of the most mysterious UFO encounters in history. The person who brought this case to light was Raymond Fowler, a veteran researcher in the field of the paranormal and extraterrestrial phenomena. With years of experience and an intense passion for the unknown, Fowler became a prominent figure in ufology, standing alongside major names like Stan Gordon and Lauren Coleman in the study of the supernatural and unidentified flying objects. From an early stage, Fowler was captivated by the mysteries surrounding alien life. He became a member of several organizations dedicated to the study of extraterrestrial existence and had access to numerous case files involving alien encounters. Yet among them, one incident from the early 1970s stood out as one of the most extraordinary experiences he had ever come across. When Fowler received a call about an alleged alien abduction, he immediately sensed the significance of the case. This wasn't just an isolated incident, it could be a crucial piece in proving the existence of extraterrestrial intelligence. Thanks to his wide network in the UFO research community, he was quickly able to reach the victim, Betty Andreasson, an ordinary woman living with her family in Massachusetts. When they met and he asked her what had happened, Betty hesitated and admitted she couldn't remember clearly. Her memories of that night were fragmented, disjointed, and extremely vague. She only had a faint recollection of seeing strange small beings with unusual bodies and being taken away for bizarre experiments. That very uncertainty made the case even more intriguing to Fowler. He realized that Betty's story contained numerous mysterious elements that required careful and thorough investigation. So he decided to use regressive hypnosis, a method used to recover memories that may have been lost or suppressed due to psychological trauma or mental shock. Under the guidance of professional hypnotherapists, Betty and her husband Ron took part in several regression hypnosis sessions, all closely supervised by Raymond Fowler himself. During the very first session, Betty slipped into a deep state of relaxation, and from there, the buried memories began to surface clearer and more detailed with each passing moment. She began to recount what had happened on a January evening in 1967. After finishing dinner and tidying up the kitchen as usual, Betty, who at the time was home alone caring for the children because Ron was in the hospital due to an accident, was getting ready to rest after a long, exhausting day. Suddenly, a brilliant light shone through the window, illuminating the entire kitchen and the area surrounding the house. Curious but somewhat uneasy, Betty looked out the window and was stunned to see a massive flying object hovering in the air. It resembled an airplane, yet emitted no sound at all. The light it cast was so bright it made the night look like broad daylight. Moments later, the kitchen lights flickered a few times and then went out completely. A strange pink beam then shot directly at her through the window. Betty immediately lost consciousness. She didn't know how much time had passed when she awoke confused and disoriented. In front of her stood strange beings, not terrifying monsters like those in movies, but small entities with slender bodies, large heads, and deep black eyes. Though initially frightened, Betty quickly sensed that they meant no harm. They did not speak aloud, but instead communicated by projecting thoughts directly into her mind. As if guided by an invisible force, Betty and several others were taken aboard the same glowing craft that had hovered over her home. There, she underwent a series of experiences that would haunt and mystify her for the rest of her life. And this was just the beginning. Once aboard the mysterious craft, Betty was overwhelmed by what she saw. The interior was bathed in a soft, ethereal light, giving the impression of stepping into another world. There were no windows yet. The walls could transform into transparent panels, allowing her to clearly view the sky outside. Every object inside the ship glowed faintly shimmering, as though powered by an energy not of this earth, and some even seemed to change shape depending on their function. The small beings guided her through different sections of the craft. Each room served a unique purpose, leaving her stunned and awestruck. Finally, they led her into a special chamber, and that's when the truly extraordinary began to unfold. In this room, Betty was placed on a white table. She remained fully conscious and aware of everything happening around her, but remarkably, she felt no pain or fear. The beings began to perform a full-body examination using devices she had never seen before. There were no sounds, no surgical tools, no invasive methods, yet they could seemingly analyze her organs, cellular structure, and physiological functions with astonishing precision. One device resembling a lighter mirror emitted a unique beam that scanned her body, allowing them to see through her without making a single incision. Her heartbeat, breathing, and nervous system were all carefully monitored using a technology that appeared far beyond human comprehension. They even tested her vision using delicate beams of light and energy, making her feel as though she was being examined by a superior intelligence. However, what left the deepest impression on Betty was not the medical tests, but the profound metaphysical and spiritual experiences that followed. Through some unknown method, they brought her into an altered mental state, where she saw mystical symbols like a phoenix rising from flames, symbolizing rebirth and transformation. It felt as though they were trying to impart great truths about life, death, and the nature of the soul. As a devout Christian, Betty sensed a deep spiritual resonance in the experience, as if she had just awakened from a long slumber. But it didn't stop there. She went on to endure a series of psychological and memory-related experiments. The beings had the ability to read her thoughts, memories, and even her most hidden secrets, all without saying a word or using any machines. It was both shocking and illuminating, opening a doorway to deep inner awareness. Betty began to believe that these beings were not just studying the human body, they were trying to reach the innermost depths of the human soul. She felt as if she had been invited on a journey to uncover the truth about human existence and the universe itself. Their examination went beyond the physical and spiritual. They also tested her emotional capacity. They placed her in simulated scenarios to observe how she responded to fear, joy, anxiety, and even faith. Every emotional reaction was closely monitored and analyzed, as if they were studying a complex yet promising life form, one full of potential. Next came the test of willpower, a challenge that required her to maintain a meditative state for an extended period, designed to measure her mental strength and concentration. Though she felt an invisible pressure bearing down on her, Betty realized this was a chance to explore her own limits and push beyond them. After everything, she was brought into a room resembling a bathhouse, where a strange light shone across her body, bringing her an unprecedented sense of peace and relief. It was more than just a physical recovery process. It felt like a spiritual cleansing ritual. She sensed that all her burdens, fears, and negative energy were melting away, as if she were being reborn into a lighter, brighter, and freer version of herself. When the experiments were over, the extraterrestrial beings returned Betty to her home. She woke up in her familiar kitchen with everything around her, exactly as it had been, as if nothing had ever happened. Her family members were gathered around her, eyes filled with worry and confusion. They told her that she had fallen into a deep sleep-like state, seemingly unconscious and unresponsive to anything throughout that entire time. That was all they knew until Betty underwent a regression hypnosis session. It was that very session that unlocked the tightly sealed doors of memory, allowing her to recount the entire breathtaking and bizarre experience. Her story quickly spread and became a sensation across the globe. Renowned UFO researcher Raymond Fowler documented her entire experience in a book titled The Betty and Ron Case, turning the event into one of the most famous abduction cases in modern history. However, it was the sheer strangeness and vivid detail of her account that made it the subject of intense public debate. Was Betty truly recounting a real event, or was this an elaborate dream conjured by her subconscious mind? In search of answers, the scientific community stepped in. Many psychologists and hypnosis experts worked together to examine the credibility of Betty's memories. And if what she described was indeed true, one inescapable question had to be asked: who were the beings that abducted her? Let's revisit Betty's description of those entities: small, thin bodies, large heads, and glowing black eyes. Chances are you've heard of them before. They are known as the Greys, the most iconic representation of extraterrestrials in popular culture. They are said to possess superior intelligence, telepathic communication abilities, and are frequently featured in reports of mysterious alien abductions. People who claim to have encountered the Greys often say their bodies were completely paralyzed, unable to speak, move, or resist, as if placed under some form of mind control. From the 1980s through the 1990s, the Greys appeared heavily in films, books, in television shows, becoming a haunting symbol of UFO phenomena. One of the most notable works that helped shape this image was Steven Spielberg's film Close Encounters of the Third Kind. But Betty's case was not the first of its kind. Back in 1961, an American couple, Barney and Betty Hill, shared a remarkably similar experience, being abducted by beings nearly identical in appearance to the Greys. The striking resemblance between the two stories, despite being 6 years apart and entirely unrelated, led many to believe that this was no mere coincidence. Supporters of the extraterrestrial hypothesis believe that Betty and Ron truly experienced a real encounter with beings from beyond Earth. Raymond Fowler firmly held this view. He emphasized that under hypnosis, Betty's account was highly consistent and included many intricate details that would be difficult to fabricate. He also believed that her profound spiritual experiences were clear evidence of the extraordinary capabilities of alien beings far beyond the scope of modern human science. Betty's story has since reinforced the belief held by the UFO community and parts of the public in the existence of intelligent extraterrestrial life. They believe that these beings are not only observing us, but silently studying and communicating in ways humanity does not yet fully understand. However, skepticism still persists. Some scientists and psychologists have proposed that Betty's experience might have been the result of complex psychological phenomena, such as hallucinations, false memories, or vivid dreams generated by the subconscious. In particular, the use of regression hypnosis, a controversial technique to recover memories, has led the scientific community to treat her case with even greater caution. Though widely used in UFO research, this method is criticized for being highly susceptible to suggestion-making, recalled memories potentially inaccurate. So what is the truth? Do the gray beings truly exist? Or are they merely a mirror reflecting humanity's deepest fears, suppressed emotions, and desire to understand the universe? The answer still lies in the shadows. But one thing is certain: Betty's story has ignited a spark, one of searching, of wonder, and a powerful belief that we are not alone in this universe. One of the most serious limitations of regression hypnosis is its ability to generate false memories. Hypnosis is not a time machine that allows people to retrieve past memories with perfect accuracy. On the contrary, it can blur the line between reality and imagination. People under hypnosis can easily imagine non-existent details, especially when influenced by leading questions or the expectations of the hypnotist. If a UFO researcher like Mr. Fowler had unknowingly steered Betty in a certain direction, it's entirely possible that she constructed parts of the memory to meet those expectations. Worse still, there's no way to verify the accuracy of what she recalled. It's all just words without a single piece of physical evidence to confirm that the abduction ever occurred. Because of this, many scientists and psychologists have dismissed the theory of a mysterious alien abduction. Moreover, Betty and Ron's story emerged precisely at the time when alien phenomena were becoming a major trend in popular culture. The media and film industry were flooded with imagery of extraterrestrial beings, which only fueled doubts as to whether Betty's account was truly a personal experience or simply a product of imagination shaped by the cultural zeitgeist. Yet there remain unexplained elements. Betty and Ron's encounter wasn't just about alien imagery. It was filled with spiritual overtones, almost like a meeting with something supernatural beyond human comprehension. This gave rise to another hypothesis, the ultra-terrestrial theory. According to this theory, the beings Betty encountered did not come from another planet, but rather from a parallel dimension coexisting with our own. They are not extraterrestrial in the traditional sense, but rather supernatural entities that may have existed on Earth for ages in a non-physical form undetectable by ordinary human senses. These beings are often associated with spirits, demons, or mysterious legends in folklore. Betty's story seems to support this theory. She did not communicate with them through spoken language, but via telepathy, a trait often attributed to non-physical beings. She perceived them clearly without the need for sound or words. While telepathy is frequently reported in alien abduction cases, in Betty's experience, it was described more as a profound spiritual connection. She even described a blinding, powerful light, a symbol commonly seen in religious or mystical experiences. She referred to the encounter as a spiritual journey, not merely an abduction. This suggests that her experience was not just physical, but touched the deepest levels of human consciousness. The ultra-terrestrial theory posits that these entities may be supernatural beings who have silently interacted with humanity for centuries, but can only be perceived in altered states of consciousness, such as during meditation, hypnosis, or near-death experiences. Another detail supporting this theory is the striking difference between Betty's experience and most traditional abduction reports. While most victims describe being taken aboard spacecraft and undergoing medical experiments, Betty's account was filled with mystical, spiritual, and almost sacred elements. She even described seeing a radiant, phoenix-like figure symbolizing rebirth and transformation, something almost never mentioned in typical abduction cases. All of these details make the ultra-terrestrial hypothesis more compelling than ever. It opens a new dimension of knowledge, a realm where non-physical entities might exist yet remain beyond the reach of modern human perception. Even so, this hypothesis also faces a multitude of doubts and counter-arguments, much like the controversial method of hypnosis it often relies on. One of the greatest limitations of this theory is the lack of clear, concrete evidence. As of now, everything we know comes primarily from Barry's own accounts, which were reconstructed through special techniques like regression hypnosis. Furthermore, the strange beings she claimed abducted her are believed to exist in alternate dimensions, a concept that currently lies far beyond the verification capabilities of modern science. Despite the controversy, the ultra-terrestrial hypothesis has introduced an entirely new perspective on paranormal phenomena in dimensions that defy human comprehension. There is no denying that the case of Barry and Grayson is one of the most well-known reports associated with extraterrestrial life, drawing significant attention from researchers around the world. We've all heard about the Greys, those gray-skinned beings with large eyes and superior intellect, but there's also an alternative explanation. Perhaps these entities didn't come from some distant planet, but from a parallel dimension where supernatural beings have always existed. However compelling that may sound, no hypothesis can be fully convincing. They all suffer from one critical flaw: a lack of physical evidence. So could it be that everything Barry experienced was just a false memory? The phenomenon of false memory has been studied extensively by the scientific community. It occurs when a person believes they're recalling a real past event, but in truth, the memory has been distorted or fabricated entirely. This can stem from a variety of factors: biological, psychological, environmental, or simply the result of a powerful imagination. Psychologists have shown that humans do not store memories like a tape recorder. Instead, memories are reconstructed every time we recall them, and this reconstruction is highly susceptible to emotions, beliefs, and external suggestions, especially when the individual is in a highly suggestible state, like during regression hypnosis. The case of Barry and Grayson is a classic example. The memories that surfaced during hypnosis may not reflect what truly happened. In fact, Barry's strong belief in spiritual phenomena and the existence of extraterrestrials might have played a key role in forming memories that never actually existed. Barry came from a deeply religious family background. Her mindset was always open to mystical experiences and supernatural ideas. This made her more susceptible to fantastical imagery, particularly while in the unconscious state induced by hypnosis. In that altered state, her spiritual beliefs, religious symbols, and subconscious imagination could have fused together to create a narrative of alien abduction. But it didn't stop there. The media and popular culture also played a significant role in shaping human memory. Remember the time when Barry and Grayson reported their experience was the height of a cultural boom in alien-related content. Films, books, and TV shows were saturated with imagery of extraterrestrial beings, gray skin, large heads, big eyes, and flying saucers drifting across the sky. These visuals had become iconic symbols of alien life, and it's very possible that these cultural images infiltrated Barry's subconscious, influencing how she reconstructed an experience that may have been more a product of culture than personal reality. Many studies have shown that humans can unconsciously absorb imagery from the media and integrate it into their memories, believing them to be real even when they are not. This leads to a strange psychological phenomenon known as the Mandela effect, when a group of people collectively misremember an event in the same way. It proves that human memory is far less accurate than we tend to believe. Memory is not just a record, it is also a creative process. In Barry's case, if she truly believed she had been abducted by aliens, those memories may not have been the result of a real experience, but rather the product of a complex interaction between her personal psychology, cultural influences, and the subconscious mind's capacity to construct reality. In short, the false memory hypothesis offers a plausible explanation for the strange experiences Barry reported. It does not entirely invalidate her emotions or beliefs, but rather places them within a clearer scientific and psychological framework. This in turn makes the story all the more complex and compelling because it's not just about aliens, but about how the human mind works and the blurred line between reality and imagination. Betty's story has captured the attention of the UFO research community and paranormal enthusiasts for decades. Her case has not only been examined through scientific and psychological lenses, but also through the perspectives of conspiracy theories and supernatural interpretations. Betty and Barney were not the first to claim they had been abducted by alien beings, but what stands out is that the imagery and experiences they described closely resemble many other UFO reports from the same era. This raises an important question: were their memories influenced by popular culture? It's entirely possible that during the process of recollection, especially under hypnosis, Betty unconsciously reconstructed details she had previously seen or heard in films, books, or stories circulating in the community. Furthermore, her strong religious faith may have played a significant role in shaping the spiritual or mystical aspects of her experience. From a scientific standpoint, the case has never been rigorously examined due to the lack of specific and convincing evidence. No physical traces, no tangible artifacts, and the entire story relies almost entirely on personal memory, a faculty known to be highly fallible. This makes the event's authenticity difficult to verify, especially since Betty's descriptions did not differ much from the common alien narratives popular during that decade. That said, it's impossible to deny that this is one of the most haunting and fascinating stories in UFO history. Though many mysteries remain unsolved, Betty's experience has become an essential part of humanity's ongoing exploration of the connections between the human mind's spirituality and the unknown dimensions of the universe. From a personal perspective, I believe the case of Betty and Barney is a powerful example of how memory, belief, and cultural influence can merge to create experiences that blur the line between fact and imagination. This story shouldn't be seen as conclusive proof of alien existence, but rather as a deeply psychological phenomenon reflecting the complex nature of how we perceive and reconstruct reality. As we conclude the exploration of Betty and Barney's abduction case, we're not just looking at a strange event, we're we're confronting profound questions about the limits of human understanding. With its surreal elements and deep psychological impact, the story is more than just a UFO legend. It's a lesson in how we react to the unexplainable. Did this really happen, or was it merely the product of a vivid and compelling imagination? The answer remains out of reach. But it is precisely this ambiguity that makes the story so eerily captivating, urging us to keep wondering about the undiscovered possibilities of our vast universe. In the search for answers to the unknown, we sometimes have to look not just outward for physical evidence, but inward into the mind and into the true nature of human consciousness. Because in the end, what matters most may not be whether we find the answers, but that the journey opens our eyes to new horizons of awareness far beyond the limits of what we once believed to be real.